All right, guys, got to give you an update on the brakes. I always do a video whether it's good or bad, and this is the bad. So obviously building the car, I did all my own brake lines, and I had my wife out here Monday working the brake pedal, and I was under there doing all the bleeding. And about the time I hear when I walked up, get up here to the front, I had done the rear, got up here to the front, and she said, "I'm starting to get a pedal." So I was all had a smile on my face. I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm gonna have brakes." I walk around to do the front wheel up here, and I noticed a big puddle underneath the car down here, and that's where my proportioning valve is. The brake lines that I used on this car are store-bought brake lines, like these. These are not brake lines; these are too big, but this is pretty much the same exact thing. You can get all kinds of different lengths of these sticks at any parts store. Now this is got a Teflon coating on it, which supposedly helps in keeping it from kinking. Really, all it does is it helps the tubing bender glide, I think, easier. But I like to use WD-40 on the tubing and the bender when I'm doing brake lines because it just helps it slide easier and keep it from kinking. But the bigger the line you use, the easier it is to kink. But anyway, this is basically what you would do to replumb a whole car if you're going to do it yourself, because you can get all kinds of different lengths and you can get away with not having to cut and flare yourself. So these come double flared and they have the fittings on them already, so you just bend them to fit. But anyway, you will use on a basic car like mine, old 55 with a a 700 R4 and a 350 engine. You use a 3/16 brake line for your brakes, and you use 5/16 for your transmission coolant lines, and you use 3/8 for your fuel line. Anyway, that is what I use, and they are very, very inexpensive. But I will say, if you plan on doing your brake lines yourself, or any of them actually, buy an extra one. Like if you buy two lines, by a third, because you're probably going to screw one up. It is best to get like some wire, like a big roll of steel wire, thin, that you can bend yourself, like coat hanger size, or clothes hanger. And anyway, straighten it out the best you can, and then use that. Figure out how, you act like that's the brake line and use it for your template to transfer when you bend up your line at the table or floor, or however you do it. But anyway, that's how I do my lines. Now, what happened was I had a leak on one of the upper lines on the top of the proportioning valve, and they come out at an angle, and it was a double flare. And every time I do a brake line, I never over torque them. I do a pretty firm, but not enough to round out the nut or cause an issue. So anyway, I put the wrench on it, and I give it a little bit of a turn, and it actually felt a little loose. I was like, well, it's probably just loose, and I tweaked it a little bit and had her hit the brake pedal a couple times, and it was still leaking, so it didn't work. So I give it a little bit more of a torque than what I would normally do, and it still didn't fix the leak. So at that point, I clamped on some vice grips. I have a pair of vice grips here that have a smooth area on the end of it, and it's flat-sided, and that way it doesn't have a lot of teeth, so it would tear into it. So anyway, it clamped on there pretty good, and I gave it a pretty good heave-ho, and it still didn't keep it from leaking. It's the same amount of leak, like it didn't slow it down or anything. So at that point, I got in there and I took the brake line off and bent it over to me, and I was looking at it with a flashlight. I don't see anything wrong with it. It kind of looked a little crooked a little bit, like it got flared crooked, but I don't see anything wrong with it. There's no crack in it or anything, which is what I thought might be wrong. Hoping the prop valve, there's not something wrong with it, but it's probably the line. So what I ended up doing, instead of making a whole new line, because when I made these top lines to go from the master cylinder down there, the engine wasn't in the car, so I got my body up inside where the engine would be, and I could work them down in there. But this time the engine and everything's in, it would have been a pain in the butt. So I went to a hose supply in Tulsa yesterday and got some stainless steel braided flex lines. I didn't really have the money to spend, but at this point, I'm under the gun and I just got to get it done. But these are stainless steel braided flex lines, but they have a clear shield on them, and they had many colors to choose from. This is called smoke gray on here, and I think it looks pretty cool. But I had no idea until I got here yesterday and actually noticed that my Russell front brake hoses are the same smoke gray shield on them, so they actually match, and I had no idea they were going to match. So I had one cut 38 inches long and I had one cut 40 inches long, and it cost me $75. Now these are not crimped yet. I got to take them back this afternoon and get them crimped, but I had to bring them back here, get them the exact length they need to be, and then I'm going to draw a little fine tip Sharpie line on the fitting and a fine line on the shielding. That way he can crimp them and they'll be clocked. So anyway, I got to make 2 trips. Anyway, I'm going to have stainless steel braided flex lines basically. So it's kind of been a mess trying to figure out how to route them lines to make them look good. I didn't want them going back at an angle, but I have to because my inner fender comes in like this, and I didn't want this one laying on it. So I tried to kick them back at the same amount of angle to go up here alongside the body mount. But anyway, I had these body mount covers that this one actually will go, I'm not going to put it all the way up there, but it'll go all the way down on there, and it'll be painted the same gloss black. And it's just a body mount cover to hide all that ugly. So what I've decided to do is put 2 dual clamps on here, one there and one there, and then brake lines will run right along the side of that, and they'll be firmly attached to the body. So I'm going to weld these square nuts on the back side so I can, do it outside the car and not have to worry about trying to get a wrench back there, which would be impossible with the front fenders and stuff on. So anyway, I'm going to weld those on today, but it's for this style of clamp right here. These are billet clamps, and they're split in half, so it's 2 pieces, one there and one there. But these are not designed to bolt to anything. These are designed just to be free hanging, basically. They have a little socket cap Allen on one end and then it's threaded on the other. So what I did was I drilled it out, and this is just what I had here because I didn't want to spend 40 bucks on 2 clamps. But anyway, I drilled them out, and these things are shaped, and they're skinnier in the center basically, like a figure 8. So that posed a problem with a bolt going in there because the only bolts I had extra in all my extra ARP 12-point stuff was 1/4x20, and the head stuck over the side of the clamp, and the bolt was up, so you could see some of the stem of the bolt sticking up through there. So I did my redneck lathe, and I basically ground the head down, and now it fits inside the clamp and doesn't hang over the side, but it fits down on there flat. So this is what I did. Now the clamps that I have are bigger than the lines, so I took a piece of rubber hose and I split it and I wrapped it around the hose, and then it fits down inside there, and then when you tighten that up it squeezes that hose, and this will not slide anymore. So just kind of a redneck sleeve, I guess you'd say. But anyway, these will be basically bolted on, one there and one there, with 1/4 bolts, 12 points. So a little bit of detail, but I had to do a lot of work to make it work. But because I got more time than money. This is my redneck lathe. I've covered this before. This is a corded drill. I zip tie the trigger wide open. I chuck the bolt up in there. This is actually the bolt, same bolt, but you can see the head hanging out there on it. Anyway, I chuck it up in there, and then I plug it in. This thing's going wide open, and then I plug in my air to my 80 grit roll-lock disc angle grinder, and just like within 6-8 seconds, that thing is ground down the head width I need. So that is my redneck lathe. I've had to do that several times on some ARP bolts to get the heads trimmed down a little bit to fit something. But anyway, now the other thing I ran into was the speedometer cable. I've got like a parts store replacement for a 55 Chevy cable that's black coated. Anyway, trying to get it to come out and go down there, I've decided to put it right along the bottom of those brake hoses. So I drilled a hole there, and I'm just going to use this Christmas tree style clip. It's just a push clip, like the door panel on new cars would clip on. That way it'll snap in there, and then I just basically clip that over the speedo cable. So it's just stuff that I have here, and I'm going to use it because I just don't have the money. I've got a little bit less than 2 months to make the show. I'm not worried. I'm pretty sure I can make it. It's just down to painting parts, and now we've got 60-degree days. A lot of them lined up so I can get my painting done. So I'm not worried in the least. The majority of the hard stuff on the car is done. All the bodies panels are they're already done. All I got to do is wipe them down. I got to bring them out here, set them up, wipe them down, and paint them. I think I got to sand the deck lid. I got to sand the hood, and I got one fender to sand if I remember right. But everything else is pretty much ready to wipe and shoot. So I'm not worried about making that show. I think I can pretty much handle it now. But anyway, my idea was to get the brakes done, and I'm going to go ahead and bolt the steering box on the car, and then stick the steering wheel on it, and then I can start the car up and move it around behind my house for when I paint all the parts. I don't have to worry about overspray getting on the car. I could pull the car out in the driveway and put plastic on it, but if the wind's blowing, you know, the plastic might scratch the paint. And I don't have the money to go down and buy a car cover to put on the car. I'm not going to do that. I'm kind of, at this point, I'm kind of under the gun financially, and there's still things I wanted to get for the car to have at the show, and I'm not going to make it. It's just going to be rolled in there, and that's it. I wanted to get a full set of the wheel cribs, which are made by Race Ramps. They're just like wheel cribs. You know, you jack your car up and put them under the wheels, and that way your car's elevated off the ground. So I could put my mirrors under it and everything. I don't even have mirrors yet. I was just going to go to Walmart and get a couple of, like your mirrors that you buy for your room, your bedroom that you would hang on your door or whatever. But anyway, I wanted to get an area rug to put under it, like from Lowe's. And I priced those things the other day, and I was like, okay, I'm not getting an area rug because they're a few $100. I wanted something kind of colorful and kind of like casino carpet. You know how crazy those look with all the designs and crap and the multicolors? Because the car's black, and I thought something crazy would kind of pop under it. But I don't know, I'm not a interior decorator. Anyway, that was the idea. But anyway, so at this point, by the time the car's done, I'm probably not going to have any more money to buy the stuff I need, but that's okay. But the other thing I'm worried about is I may not have enough paint for the car, but I might just need another quart instead of buying a gallon. But it seems like the quart was like $90 and a whole gallon was 180. So it'd be stupid to buy a quart. But I may have enough paint. I don't know. I would rather have extra, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's where I'm at. It's brakes right now. But I almost had the brakes done. I almost had a brake pedal, man. And I got to say, that .5 fluid, I can vouch for it not hurting paint, because had that have been regular .3 or 4 brake fluid, I would have been respraying the whole side area of that chassis, and I would have been mad. I would have probably gave up at that point, but the brake fluid, you know, was all over the frame, and what I used was that wax and grease remover that I used to remove the glue off the bumper, you know, from the old tape, and I just hosed it. And it just run that stuff off there, it flushed it off there, and then the next day I come out and climbed in there, and you can't even see where I sprayed anything, or like you can't even tell anything was on it. that stuff's awesome. It doesn't hurt your paint. I can vouch for that. But of course, it didn't keep me from putting a trash bag over here. You know, I had it taped up to the firewall, and I had it all dipped in down there, so the, you know, when I bench bled the master cylinder on the car, it would, all the drippings would go down in there and catch it. But anyway, guys, I'm going to finish these brake lines. I got to get them cut to fit and then get them clocked, and then I'm going to run them to Tulsa and have them crimped, and then maybe tonight I can get my wife out here and we can get the brakes bled again. But I'm close, man. I'm close, and it'll be pretty cool to be able to start it up and drive it around behind the house under its own power. I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm going to get back to work. Like, share, tag, follow, throw rocks at me, and all that good stuff.